So today we're going to talk about a factory, and we're going to build out a factory that will be utilized in a web API controller. Currently, I'm building this bulk import controller that will support bulk imports for CSVs as well as photos. So right now I'm going to go ahead and collapse everything to definitions just so we kind of get an idea of what's happening here. So right now I have this import controller, this web API import controller, and I have two imports. I have this district import and I have this school import. And I also have this CSV import and this photos import. So what will end up happening is this district import and school import endpoint will be become deprecated. We're actually going to combine these two controller endpoints into this one CSV endpoint. The whole nature of this this build here for this factory is to essentially have one endpoint that will discover the kind of import that's going to happen. And once it discovers the kind of import that will happen, it will hand back the proper interface in order for the execution for the import to take place. That being said, if we go to the common interface, we see this iImport client, and this is the common interface. It has a bunch of steps from start to completion. And then it also has this convenience method for run, which essentially executes each individual step here from start through completion. The idea here is that this common interface has these segmented functions in order to allow us to eventually scale out and distribute the processing across multiple eventually endpoints or services. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to take this common interface. We're going to create a factory. So I'll go ahead and do that. Go ahead and create this factory. I'll go ahead and create this factory inside of this business project. I'll go ahead and create a folder called factories. And what I'll do is I'll create a interface called iImport factory. And I'll go ahead and highlight that. I'll go ahead and create a public interface. And what we're going to do for this public interface is it will hand us back a iImport client. And we'll say get import client. And basically what we'll pass to this guy, if we go back to the controller, what we'll pass to it is this import file. And so pass it an import file, and we'll go ahead and add the references so that everything can build out. Then what we'll do is come in, create another class called import factory. Import factory. This guy will inherit from iImport factory. We'll go ahead and implement the interface. So we got the basic gist at this point. So the factory we're going to do in this guy, I'll go ahead and write some pseudocode here. What we'll do is going to use Panama in order to help us out a little bit. And Panama is my open source framework that essentially gives us an opportunity to use CQRS with a Fluent API. So what we'll do is we'll essentially do something like handler or result, where we'll say new handler. We'll pass it service locator current we'll do something like, we'll feed it the file, and then we'll execute a bunch of commands. So we'll say the first command is, the gist of this factory is, or let's talk about this import file, because this import file will determine the kind of commands that we're going to create. So if we take a look at the import file, and we see we have this ID, this email, and this key. Now the whole gist of this import file is the consumer of the service will be passing the service this import file, and the import file will contain a key that looks something like this. Go ahead and add summary keys, import key, which has this format, and the format will be something like, give it a GUID, something like a GUID / it will be, we'll say today's date, which is 21/10/24 _ a name. We'll say district name or school name. And so a key will be in this format. When we get a key, essentially we'll have to unpack and understand, or I should say, when we get the key, we have to do some string manipulation. We have to split based off of this /, and then once we get the key, I believe actually, you know what? Let me correct myself. I think the key will actually look like this. The unique identifier is actually removed and actually placed in a proper property here. The key will actually be something like this, where you'll have a date and then you'll have a name on the key, and then with an extension, which will, in this case, be CSV. This being said, what we have to do with this key is we have to understand or take a look at our database using this name here and query against our districts or our schools to determine if it's a district or a school import that's taking place. And if we find a district by this name or a school by this name, then we'll match that with the particular import client that will be returned. So inside of our factory, we'll say get something, we'll do get name from key. Then we'll do a command where we say get district from database, if this, then we'll do command where we say get school from database, if exists. Then we'll say, depending on the district or the school object, we'll say get import client based on entity. And then what we'll essentially do is invoke async, and essentially when we get this information back, we'll just say var client equals result dot data get single import client. Like so. Then we'll just return the client back to the consumer. So this is essentially the pseudocode for this process. And so basically we're gonna get the name from the key. So we're gonna take this, gonna look at this key and extract the key or extract the name part from the key. In this command, we're basically going to query the database. This is a database query where we'll take that name and query the database for districts. And if we locate a district, then we'll go ahead and put that district on the payload for this handler. Then we'll do the same thing for the school. And then we'll examine the payload for a district or a school. And if a district exists, we'll return a district client. If a school exists, we'll return a school client. And then we'll just return the import client to the consumer. That's essentially the gist of this factory method. So let's go ahead and take this out of the pseudocode. What I'll do is remove that. We'll go ahead and add the command, add all of the, go ahead and add all of the references. We'll go ahead and do result what we got to do is we actually have to make this a task because we're going to await this. So we're going to go ahead and create a task out of that. We'll go ahead and sort our usings. Then we'll go to our actual factory and do task. Task. Like so. We'll do async. Add the references. And then we'll go ahead and await this. And now we'll have the data. Like so, we'll add our references. And so what we have to do here is there's a few ways that we can pass. So this is a good segue into what this this extension is for this handler. So the handler hands us back a iResult. The iResult has this data payload. The data payload contains an array of iModel or objects that are inherent from iModel. We're going to actually, we could either for straight up object model, we could, for our models that we return back to the UI, we can return, or those can inherit iModel. Or in this particular case, because we're using, because we are going to utilize this iMport client, we could either say iModel, like so, and then the iModel is essentially a blank interface just to give the object the ability to be carried on the payload. So we can run with that for now. What I might do is something a little bit differently, but just for the sake of everything right now, what I'll do is I'll inherit everything like that, so that then the only thing we have to do is create these commands. Now, I think I already have some commands here that will give us, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go to let's go to the school, because I already have a command that will parse based on the key. Just have to find that. So let me just click around. So we get the name from the key like this. So what I'll do is take this and go back to the factory. I'm gonna say, update the references. So we're gonna get the school name from the key. So what we're gonna do, this thing is essentially expecting it to be in this format. So it takes and it already does the split. And what we're gonna do is, I think what we can do is reuse this command here. And actually what I'll do, because I kind of want it to be a little bit more generic, is I'll go ahead and create another one called get name from key, like so. And I'm gonna go on this get name for the key, and I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of all of that. I'm gonna say it's gonna be with this. And now we have a method that takes the key, or it looks for a key value pair that has a string called key, and then it does the splitting for us, and it actually puts another key value pair on the payload, this context payload, which is the context payload within the context of a handler is the set of data objects that each command can work on. So right now, this one is expecting a key value pair to exist with the or a key called key, and it's going to put something called name on there. So in order to make this work, what we're going to do is go back to our factory, and instead of putting the file directly on there, actually we'll leave the file for now, and then I'll go ahead and do this new key value pair. Key value pair. We'll say key, and then we'll do file.key, like so. We could either do this, or with inside of the key, or inside of the commands, because we're actually working on, get this correct, but because we're working on with the context of the actual import file object, instead of putting a key on the payload like this, what we can do is we're gonna, instead of, because we actually created a new command, we're gonna go to this name from key, and then we're just gonna say data get single, and the type is gonna be import file. Import file. And we're just gonna get rid of this because we don't need that anymore. And so now we have the import file. What I'll do is I'll just say file, and then the file key. And so you could do it like that, or you can say, do this, like that, and then that will put us in a position where we can use the actual file off of the payload, and then it'll actually process everything out like so, and put a name key on the payload. So that's the first command. The second command is we need to get the district by that key, that name. We're gonna head back over here to the district controller, or excuse me, the district client, and we're going to, I think I already have a command that gets the district by name. District by name. So we already got a district by name command. Let's take a look at this. Right now, what it does is it looks for the name, pulls the name, and then it actually does a query on the database. We're using the Dapper, or I should say, the Panama.Core MySQL Dapper interface, where we're actually using the get, and it will take the model based on the map that we have set for the Dapper map, and it will map everything. We do a basic replace like this for now, just to do a basic name, string name replace. And if we find a name, or if we don't find a district, we're throwing this exception. So what we want to do is, instead of doing this, is what we're going to do is, we're going to find district by name if exists, and we're going to rename this. So if I go back to my factory, because we actually don't want to throw an exception. If it doesn't find it, it's okay if it doesn't find it. And so what I'm going to do is just change the names. We don't need this for now. We're going to change the name. Let's go back to the name. And we'll do this. And what we'll do is, instead of throwing a service exception here, we'll throw a service exception if the name doesn't exist. We'll say import name could not be found, because the name should exist where if it's null, we'll just say return, and then otherwise it'll go ahead and add that district, right? So we also have a school version of this. Go back to our factory here. You see that's done. Now let's go to the school control or client, and we're going to get this. Going to copy this. Oh, not this one. What we're going to copy is get school by name, and then what we'll do is go back to the factory, paste this, like so, and we'll essentially do the same thing what we did for the other flavor. For the district, we'll just say import name doesn't exist. This one, as we see, it takes a school model. It does a replace on the name to try to find the school for that name. If it doesn't exist, we simply return. If it does, it'll put it on the payload. So we got this now. So the last one, this get import client, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make a new command. I'll create a new command from scratch for us for the sake of this video, just so that we can kind of see how this works. I'll go ahead and get the name, create the class, like so, entity. What we're gonna do, find the file. Just want to make sure that the namespaces are correct. So go ahead and add this namespace, like so. We're going to do public class, like so. I'm going to inherit from the iCommand interface, which is a part of the Panama.Core commands library. We're going to go ahead and in this command, we're going to implement interface. So what we have now is the following. We got potentially we'll have a school or a district. We'll say subject context. What I'll do is this. We need this name here. So we can pull, we need this namespace in order for us to pull it off of the convenience function to pull the models off based off of the model. So we're going to say district, like so. And what we'll have also is the school. So we'll also have a school model. I'm going to go here and do core models like that. And then we're going to do some magic, ladies and gentlemen. Right now we're using AutoFact, and we're actually using the key-based injection for the constructor. If we go to the controller, we'll see what we're talking about here. You see these key filters, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and copy the key filters into the class, and I'll go ahead and get these key filters here. Come stick these guys here, and what I'll do, go ahead and add the attribute filters for AutoFact. I'll go ahead and set district equals district, and school client equals to the school local school client, like so. So now we'll have the dependency injection for these particular clients already there. So basically we just need to make some decisions. So if the district exists, district is not known, then we just return, or rather we do subject data context add, and we'll say and actually we could do it. We could do it a few ways actually, because we're instantiating this. Because our commands are the way that this application is configured. The collection of commands are singletons. So to pass them this way, we'll pass the single instance that was instantiated for the entire application. And actually, we want this to be based on the request because the command, or the factory rather, could be instantiated where, remember, we are going to consume this in one endpoint. And so essentially we want the request to determine the client that we have. And we don't necessarily want to utilize the static version of the client. It just, in this case, we have two options. We can pass back the static reference, or we can do it this way. We can say, I'll go ahead and comment this out, and I'll pass back the service locator, or I'll create a locator instance, resolve, where I say import client, and then pass the key like so. District import, where go ahead and get the IOC container. And what we'll do is current.resolve, like that. And so now we can essentially get each client this way. So we just look at, okay, so we'll have a district, we got a school. What's the best way to go about returning this? So what we're going to do is we can easily say if district, we'll do it this way, essentially not null, like we have here. We'll add this to the subject, context add, and then we'll pass the context here. Like so, and else if. We could do that this way, or, and we'll do else if. Else if school not equal, no, and we'll just say like so. In this case, this be school import. Now there's several ways we can do this. We could always do some string manipulation where we determine based off of the type. We can essentially take the type name and put it in there. But I think this code here will work for now. So this will give us, if the district is there, it'll pass the district version. If the school is there, it'll pass the school version. It'll put it on the payload. If we go back to the factory now and run it, we'll get this client. So that's essentially how we can put together a client really quickly, or a factory really quickly, using Panama commands. I've been your host, and I'll see you again on the next video.